Hey everybody, part two, chapter one, intro to business. So let's begin with you recalling the fact that most people want to improve in different areas of their lives. And so they want to improve in their health, their education, socially. And so how do you know you can improve? Well, you've improved. Well, you compare where a person is at one point in time to where they were at another time. Or you actually make comparisons today and you keep that record and then compare it to future time periods. So let's just think about when it comes to health. So if I'm measuring my health, I might look at the scale today and be like, whoa, I'm pretty good. I haven't gained any weight since last year and I'm less than I was 2 years ago. So I'm all good. And then next year I get on the scale and the scale went up and I'm all sad. Well, maybe I didn't take into the account the fact that maybe I've been hitting the gym a little bit more. Maybe I've been doing some push-ups, or maybe I've been eating a lot less fatty foods like I'm eating today. That pizza and french fries with pizza and a Coca-Cola and a whole bunch of ketchup on top of it. So maybe I done changed and got rid of all of the bad habits. And so therefore, and by going to the gym, maybe my muscle mass increased and then relatively maybe my fat went down. And so therefore the number went up. The point is, looking at only one measure, one indicator provides a distortion. And then think about education, right? Somebody might go get their little college degree, and then next thing they be like, you know what? I'm smarter than everybody in the household now. That might not be true. Because lots of times when you think about it, education comes in a lot of different forms. And sometimes our mama, our daddies, our grandparents who don't have that formal education, but they're the smartest person that we know. They're the smartest people in the house. And so the reason is because education comes in a lot of different forms, and formal education is only one. So you can never look at one measure of a thing to know what that thing really is. And then when it comes to social, you might be like, I'm a lot better off today. I asked God for a husband and he gave me one. I asked God for a wife and he gave me one. I am so happy. But that's a distortion because we got to look at your relationship between you and your family, your kids, your siblings, your cousins, people that you work with, people in the community. And so if we want to find out your social health, we got to look at a lot of other things. And so using those three examples, we want you to think about economically. So economically, you can't look at just one thing. So let's just say your household, and imagine there's a lot of people living in your household, 6 or 7 people, and compare your household to all other households in your building or on your block or in your neighborhood. And so one person could say, you know what, my household, we increase our earnings by 25%. We're doing way better than everybody. No, that's just one measure. You got to look at a lot of other things. It might be that y'all spending increased by 155%, and therefore y'all ain't doing as good. So spending outgrew the amount of money that you were bringing in. All right, so we have to look at a lot of indicators. And so for every household, many households, people actually sell their labor. They have a job. They work in the economy. And they go out there every day in the universe and they do some things and then they bring back cash. And then in the household, the cash that's there, what the household does with that cash. A lot of people, they buy consumption goods. So that'll be apparel, toys, boom, sailboats, motorcycles. Also, sometimes they put that money into investments. Sometimes they invest in businesses or government bonds. And sometimes they provide money to different charities. And then sometimes they actually take money and then they start a little business. So they go to the dollar store and they say, we're going to make some soap. So they go buy some lotion and some alcohol and some water and some perfume. And they put it all in a bowl, stir it up, and squirt the perfume in there, take some plastic, wrap it up, and then they take it out to the market and they start selling. Okay? So the same thing with governments. Governments do the exact same thing. Governments, they measure all of the consumer spending that went on in their economy during a particular period. They also measure all of the money that went into investments, whether it's investing in companies, stocks, bonds, whether it's investing in government bonds. So they do that. They also measure government payments. So government payments for education, for healthcare, for safety. So the government spends a lot of money in the economy. And then they look at the difference between exports minus imports. So exports is things that are sold to other countries. And imports are things that are purchased from other countries. And just like your household, you always want to make sure you're selling more than you're buying. Okay, so the government looks at what they're selling versus buying and all of those different things. And governments make comparisons and they compare that total sum, which is called GDP. They compare that GDP to other periods of time, and hopefully it's growing. But there are periods. Sometimes GDP grows and sometimes it declines. And the cycles in which it grows and declines, we call that a business cycle. So let's go ahead and look at some of these slides right here that's going to break all of that down. So there you see the aggregate cycle. That's the total of all of that. Now, when the total GDP constantly increases, what that means is that the citizens, the residents of the country, they have a lot better things available to them: healthcare, education, housing. They have a lot better things, a lot more better things available to them, and therefore that standard of living is actually increased. All right, now let's go look at that third bullet. Let's break that down a little bit more. So we all recapped GDP is the total of consumption spending, investment, government payments, and the difference between export minus import. We add that up. But GDP means what was purchased by domestic factors of production. So for the United States, that means by labor in the United States, by money in the United States, what was produced by labor, by money, physical resources, knowledge resources, and can't remember the one I left up, entrepreneurship. So anything that was produced by all of those factors of production in the United States, we call that gross domestic product. Now, if any of those factors of production were owned by U.S. nationals, but they were produced in a different country, the productivity gets reflected in what we call the gross national product, but not the gross domestic product. All right, now that GDP, we can divide that by the population size of a particular country. So in the United States, we have roughly about 330 million, I believe, and the GDP, when you divide the GDP by the population size over the last several years, it's been fluctuating right around $63,000 per person, 64, just under 65. So the productivity of the United States is multiplied by $65,000 by all its 330 million residents. Okay, real GDP means that we adjust for either price increases or decreases or changes in the value of the currency. So for example, say that a country sold 1 million sodas last year. And then this year, the price of the sodas doubled. So the sodas were $1 each, and the country sold 1 million sodas last year, $1 million. This year, because the price doubled and each soda sold for $2, somebody from the outside comes in and they look at like, wow, y'all sold $2 million worth of sodas this year. Y'all doubled the number of sodas y'all sold from last year, which was only $1 million. But they from the outside. And then somebody else comes in like, wait a minute, let's adjust this and find out what the real GDP is. And once they adjust it, they find out, no, they did not increase the quantity of sodas. It's just that the price. So that $2 million, $1 million increase, the $2 million now that we're seeing is just a reflection of a change in price. What if the value of the dollar decreased between now and next year by 50%? So a dollar is only worth 50%. Somebody walk in that store, Miss Mabel, can I get a Coca-Cola? And they slap that dollar down on the counter. Miss Mabel look at them sideways, be like, you better put another dollar down there. What, you want a half a soda? And so he's like, Miss Mabel, I gotta give you $2. Yes. And so he gives her $2 for that. So the next year they still sell 1 million sodas, but they collected $2 million. So the $2 million is really just reflecting the fact that there was a change in the value of the currency. All right, so real GDP makes an adjustment so changes in currency or changes in price don't distort things. Purchasing power parity means that if you, in the United States, if you go in the supermarket and you buy a basket of goods, you buy some bread, some mayonnaise, and some bologna. Bread, mayo, and bologna. And you buy it, and then and you get a $10 bill, you give it to the cashier. The cashier says, thank you. You be like, I don't get no change back. She'll be like, no. And then you walk out of there and you're gone. And then you take that same $10 to some country in Europe, maybe UK, Germany, France, and you convert it over into that currency. And you take all of the new currency, $10 worth, and you put it down on the counter. And the cashier look at you like, and then she's trying to tell you, like, you got to give 50% more. You're like, goodness gracious. You go back to the currency place, you get another $5, you get the currency. Now you done put the equivalent of $15 in that currency. And then she look at you, and you be looking at her like, and then the other one, you walk over there, another country with your $5 of currency, that you exchanged in their currency, and then you drop it all down there on the counter, and they be like, "Vivi, gracias," and then next thing you know, they give you 50% back. And so the basket of goods, purchasing power parity lets you know for the same basket of goods, bologna, bread, mayo, in each of the three countries. In one country is 1.5 times what it is yours, and in another country is 0.5 times. And so countries use purchasing power parity to help adjust their currency exchange rates, where a basket of goods is relatively the same amount no matter what country you go to. Relatively, but there's a lot of difference. Okay, productivity means how much increase occurred in that GDP or how much decrease. When we have increases in productivity, then we see expansion. When we have decrease, we see collapse. The economy is actually declining. Balance of trade. Everybody in your household, make sure y'all selling a lot more in your household than what you're bringing in, even if it's your labor. So if you're bringing in 100K, if your household is bringing in 300K a year, make sure you're not buying more than 300K. You really should be buying 200K or a lot less K. You should learn to be a minimalist, okay? And so national debt is just how much money we owe. Economic stability. Everybody wants their GDP to be nice. We don't want it to grow too much. I'm sorry, we want the GDP to be nice. And the way to do that is we want other measures of our economy to be stable, such as the employment rate, price rate, changes in prices. We don't want prices to go up too much, because when prices go up too much, employers start laying people off, and then unemployment goes up. And then when unemployment goes up, that has other effects on the economy. So lots of times we need a stable supply in the economy. And so these over here, I want y'all to look at and think about some of the changes in unemployment. What happens when unemployment goes down too low? What happens to wages? The answer is wages go up. I want you to know why. Then what effect does that have on price? I want y'all to research that. And then finally, the government uses two types of policies to manage spending and money flow. So just think about your house, right? So you can come up with rules like, hey, we're only going to spend 60% of what we bring in. Somebody could come up with a rule like that. Fiscal policies capture spending and how much money is brought in from taxes. So in your household, you can say, everybody 18 and over, you got to give 30% of all the money that you earn. You got to put it into the family pot. Everybody 14 and over, you got to give 15%. So that would be a policy that manages how much money the household, how they bring money in, and then spending policy. Then money supply. The household can come up with rules like, hey, we're going to put this percentage of our money in the bank, and we never draw on it. But then sometimes when the standard of living drops down in the house, they'd be like, you know what, we need to provide more cash into the house. So you might come up with a policy under these particular circumstances, we're going to actually let the bank account drop down to a certain percentage. Okay, so that's it. So those are ways that governments manage their economic systems and ways that they compare it at one point to another. There are a lot of different indicators, but it's very important that you all know those different indicators, because looking at any one aspect of a thing provides many distortions. Thank y'all very much. We will talk to you soon.